I'm trying to tell y'all, don't worry about what people say about you. They're going to try to belittle you. They're going to try to satellize your name. They're going to try to sabotage you. They're going to just try to do anything they're trying to do to destroy you.
On August 6, 2024, deputies in Hoffman, North Carolina, were dispatched to a residence on McCoy Drive after a disturbance call. At the scene, they located a locked bedroom door. When officers attempted to make entry, a single gunshot was heard from inside. Two individuals were found in the room. 38-year-old Kenesha Miranda Harrison Neely and her husband, 46-year-old Sheldon Maurice Neely. Both were deceased. The investigation focused on reconstructing what occurred before deputies arrived. The couple's relationship began while Sheldon was incarcerated. They married during his prison term, and following his release, they lived together while managing the difficulties of reentry. Sheldon's criminal background and adjustment to life outside prison became part of the inquiry. Detectives considered possible contributing stressors: marital conflict, financial pressures, emotional strain, or trust issues. The locked door suggested an isolated confrontation. A firearm recovered inside was identified as the weapon used. The central questions involved whether the events were premeditated or the result of a sudden escalation. The case was later classified as a murder-suicide. This incident not only concerned one household, but also reflected larger issues involving prison marriages, reintegration challenges, and domestic disputes that escalate into fatal outcomes. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Kenesha Miranda Harrison Neely was born and raised in North Carolina. She grew up in an environment shaped by extended family ties and a local community that placed emphasis on close connections. At the time of her death, she was 38 years old. She lived in Hoffman, a small town located in Richmond County, North Carolina. Her residence was a family home on McCoy Drive, where she lived with her husband, Sheldon Maurice Neely. Kenesha's life was rooted in family and local traditions. Her personal and social identity was defined through both her role as a mother and her presence within her community. She had connections not only through family members, but also through friends and associates who later remember her in tributes. Kenesha was the mother of 3 children. Public memorials and reports noted her role as a parent and the importance of her presence in her children's lives. The children, now left without their mother, became central figures in the aftermath of the tragedy. Extended family members were called upon to provide care, stepping into guardianship roles to stabilize the children's future. Her extended family ties were strong, with multiple relatives acknowledging her life after her death. These relationships provided her with both support and responsibility, as her role extended beyond her household into a broader family network. Details from obituary notices and tributes describe Kenesha as a woman active in her professional and personal life. Although her exact career background was not widely publicized, descriptions consistently highlighted her as dependable, family-oriented, and engaged in her community. She was remembered for the daily responsibilities she carried, balancing personal obligations with her public role as a mother and community member. Community tributes after her death noted the sense of loss experienced not only by immediate relatives, but also by acquaintances and neighbors. This indicates that her presence extended into the daily lives of others in Hoffman and surrounding areas. Kenesha's relationship with Sheldon Maurice Neely became a significant chapter in her life. Reports indicate that she met Sheldon while he was serving time in prison. Despite his incarceration and criminal record, she chose to build a relationship with him. The relationship developed through correspondence and visits, creating a bond that eventually led to marriage. Following his release, they continued their relationship as a married couple, sharing a home in Hoffman. The decision to marry Sheldon despite his prison background later became a focal point in media narratives and true crime discussions. It was viewed as a defining choice in her personal life and a turning point that connected her story to Sheldon's past. Sheldon Maurice Neely was 46 years old at the time of the incident. His background included a known criminal history, with significant time spent in prison. Details regarding his convictions and length of incarceration were not widely available in public records, but his status as a former convict shaped both his personal trajectory and the public's later interpretation of his role in the case. His prison history was significant because it framed his marriage to Kenesha. Their relationship, beginning while he was incarcerated, was not typical, and it set the foundation for a complex marital dynamic once he re-entered society. Sheldon's social standing was shaped by his past and the community's perception of him. As a man with a prison history, his reintegration into daily life carried challenges. While details about his work or community involvement are not clear, the nature of his relationship with Kenesha became the defining aspect of his social presence in Hoffman. Within their household, Sheldon's role was as husband and stepfather. However, the nature of his relationship with Kenesha, whether stable or strained, remains unclear. Observers have suggested that tensions may have been present, although conclusive details about the inner dynamics of their marriage are limited to speculation. Possible warning signs existed in the relationship. Domestic difficulties are often reported in marriages where one partner has a history of incarceration due to challenges associated with reintegration, financial instability, and stress. While there are no confirmed reports of prior domestic incidents between Kenesha and Sheldon, the broader context of their relationship suggests potential red flags. Issues related to his reentry from prison may have caused strain. Adjustments to everyday responsibilities, combined with possible lingering behavioral patterns from prison life, may have contributed to underlying instability. These factors provide context for the events that would later unfold. In the days leading up to August 4th, 2024, Kenesha and Sheldon's household appear to function within the boundaries of routine. No major publicized incidents were reported, and from the outside, the family's life reflected normal activity. However, domestic disputes often occur privately, and without external witnesses. It is unclear whether arguments or conflicts escalated in those final days. Investigators did not release evidence of prior calls to law enforcement during this time, leaving an incomplete picture of the days before the incident. The night before the incident remains partially documented. What is known is that by the early morning hours of August 4th, tension within the household had reached a critical point. Whether an argument occurred immediately prior to the fatal moment is not confirmed, but the timing suggests a dispute or escalation inside the home during late night or early morning. Reports indicate that Kenesha and Sheldon were inside their residence, and at some point, events led to a domestic disturbance serious enough to result in external involvement. The details of their final interactions remain undisclosed, with no public statement from relatives or authorities shedding light on specific conversations or arguments. At some point in the early morning hours, a domestic disturbance call was made to law enforcement. The Richmond County Sheriff's Office dispatched deputies to the Neely residence on McCoy Drive. When deputies arrived, they found the house quiet, with most rooms appearing undisturbed. However, a locked bedroom drew their attention. Efforts to enter the room were met with resistance, as the door was secured from inside. As officers attempted to force entry, a single gunshot was heard. This sound marked the final moment of the incident. When deputies entered, they discovered both Kenesha and Sheldon deceased inside the bedroom. Kenesha, age 38, was pronounced dead at the scene. Sheldon, age 46, was also found dead. A firearm was recovered in the room. The scene offered little sign of outside interference, and no third party was found present at the residence. Based on the physical evidence available at that time, deputies reached an immediate conclusion. The deaths were ruled as a murder-suicide. The working theory established at the scene was that one party had fatally shot the other before turning the weapon on themselves. Following the discovery, the Richmond County Sheriff's Office began the formal investigation. Initial public communication was released within hours of the incident. The Sheriff's Office stated that the deaths were believed to be the result of a murder-suicide, confirming that no other individuals were suspected to have been involved. This early determination shaped the direction of both the forensic review and the public narrative. The bodies were transported to the medical examiner's office for autopsy. The medical examiner's role in this stage of the investigation was to establish the official cause and manner of death for both individuals. Through autopsy, examiners confirmed fatal gunshot wounds consistent with the events described at the scene. Analysis of the wounds provided some context about the shooting sequence, though full details were not publicly released. Autopsy reports in such cases typically include information on entry and exit wounds, distance of gunshot, and potential sequence of fire. This information, combined with crime scene evidence, would be used to verify the initial conclusion of murder-suicide. Ballistics testing was also conducted on the recovered weapon. Investigators needed to confirm that the firearm found in the bedroom was the weapon that discharged the fatal rounds. Examination of shell casings, bullet trajectories, and gunshot residue provided supporting evidence. Forensic comparison between the weapon and the wounds on both individuals further established the chain of events. Despite the ruling, unanswered questions remained. One of the most significant was the matter of who fired the weapon first. While the general ruling was murder-suicide, the exact sequence of shots and the order in which Kenesha and Sheldon died left space for speculation. Another area of uncertainty was whether there had been a struggle inside the locked bedroom before the fatal gunshots. No signs of forced entry into the room were documented, but evidence such as overturned objects or defensive wounds might have provided insight. Investigators also considered the couple's history. Whether prior domestic calls had been made to the residence was a relevant factor. Repeated reports of disturbances could have indicated an ongoing pattern of conflict. However, no full record of earlier police involvement was publicly confirmed in the immediate aftermath. Ultimately, the sheriff's office maintained its position that the case was a murder-suicide, closing the possibility of broader investigation unless new evidence emerged. The deaths of Kenesha and Sheldon were quickly reported by local media. The Richmond Observer released early details, confirming the identities of the deceased and citing the sheriff's office statement that the case was classified as a suspected murder-suicide. Other outlets echoed this report, repeating the limited information made public. Community response reflected shock at the suddenness of the event. Neighbors who had known the couple described the atmosphere as unexpected. Family members and friends took to online platforms to share memorials, tributes, and condolences. Social media pages, obituary sites, and gun violence memorials all included mentions of Kenesha, framing her as a mother whose death left a lasting gap in her family. In addition to news coverage and memorials, the story gained further attention through true crime media. A podcast episode from the 2ND Hand News titled, "She Fell for a Comrade in Prison and Paid the Ultimate Price." The Kenesha and Neely story discussed the case in detail. The episode highlighted Kenesha's marriage to Sheldon, who had a criminal background and had been incarcerated prior to their relationship. The podcast positioned the story as one shaped by the risks of prison relationships and the tragic consequences that followed. Articles and blog posts similarly framed the case as a cautionary narrative. Several accounts referred to the situation as an example of how personal relationships can evolve into dangerous dynamics when past histories and unresolved issues surface. Some headlines emphasize the element of Kenesha's connection to Sheldon's prison history, casting the story as more than a domestic tragedy and into the category of preventable violence. Across online spaces, the case continued to be discussed beyond the initial reporting. Obituary websites such as Nelson Funeral Service hosted memorial pages, while forums and social platforms allowed for speculation and further sharing of the details that were released. In examining this case, one of the central areas of focus is the dynamic between Kenesha Neely and her husband, Sheldon Neely. Investigators often begin by considering the domestic environment, searching for stressors within a marriage that could have contributed to the escalation of violence. Stressors in marriages can take many forms. Financial pressures remain one of the most consistent triggers of conflict. The available records do not provide a full account of the couple's financial situation, but considering Sheldon's background, reintegration into stable employment may have posed a challenge. Difficulty maintaining steady income or disagreements about financial priorities are common contributors to strain inside households. Emotional and trust-related issues also remain a potential factor. Marriages formed under unusual circumstances, such as while one partner is incarcerated, can sometimes carry vulnerabilities when a relationship is transferred into everyday life outside prison walls. The transition from controlled, limited communication to daily cohabitation often brings hidden challenges to the surface. What begins as admiration or loyalty during incarceration can evolve into tension once confronted with household obligations, disagreements, or unmet expectations. Thus, one theory surrounding the tragedy on McCoy Drive is that ongoing domestic conflict had intensified, whether related to money, emotional dissatisfaction, or breaches of trust. The strain may have produced an environment where confrontation became more likely to escalate. Another lens of analysis is the background of Sheldon Maurice Neely. Reports and subsequent coverage highlighted his prison history, noting that Kenesha's marriage to him began after incarceration. Adjustment to life after release is often complex. Individuals who have spent years within the structured environment of prison must learn to manage employment, relationships, and daily responsibilities without institutional oversight. For some, this transition is successful. For others, the pressures result in frustration, anger, or instability. Sheldon's background is critical in understanding potential motives. His criminal history suggests exposure to environments where violence and survival strategies were normalized. Entering a domestic partnership under these conditions can increase risk, as unresolved behavioral patterns may clash with the demands of married life. The prison background also complicates relational trust. Partners who meet during incarceration often lack experience handling ordinary stresses together, finances, parenting, or disagreements. This gap can create friction once ordinary domestic life begins. Sheldon's adjustment challenges, combined with possible stresses at home, may produce an unstable environment. When tragedies of this nature occur, investigators consider immediate triggers that may have set events in motion. In this case, the evidence suggests a confrontation occurred within a locked bedroom. Arguments escalating into violence is a recurring pattern in murder-suicide cases. Even in households where no public signs of violence exist, sudden disputes can reach a flashpoint where restraint collapses. The locked room is a significant detail. It implies isolation, either self-imposed or enforced. If both parties entered the room and the door was secured, the privacy may have intensified the confrontation. Without external intervention, the escalation had no opportunity to be interrupted. Theories suggest that an argument on August 4th, 2024, reached a critical moment inside that locked room. Words may have turned to threats, and threats to action. The presence of a firearm in that environment turned conflict into tragedy. The murder-suicide designation raises two additional questions: why Sheldon pulled the final trigger, and whether the act was premeditated or spontaneous. In many murder-suicide cases, perpetrators choose to end their own lives immediately after committing violence against a partner. The reasons often fall into two categories: an attempt to avoid accountability or a final expression control. If Sheldon's action was spontaneous, it may have been a direct response to the shock of violence. The act of killing Kenesha could have produced immediate realization, followed by self-inflicted death to avoid arrest and prosecution. If the act was planned, then it points to premeditation. The locked room, possession of a firearm, and sequence of actions could indicate that Sheldon intended not only to kill his wife, but also to end his own life, leaving no opportunity for legal consequence or reconciliation. The absence of a note or statement leaves this question unresolved. Whether impulsive or deliberate, the sequence ended with both lives lost, leaving investigators to reconstruct motive from fragments rather than testimony. The marriage between Kenesha and Sheldon reflects a broader phenomenon of relationships formed during incarceration. Prison marriages often develop through correspondence, limited visitation, and controlled environments. These conditions can create an idealized perception of the partner. Once the relationship transitions outside prison, the differences between perception and reality can become stark. Psychological pressures also weigh heavily. The formerly incarcerated partner may feel both gratitude and dependence on the spouse who supported them during confinement, while simultaneously struggling with the expectations of freedom. The partner on the outside may feel obligated to provide stability while managing their own needs. When these pressures are combined with unresolved personal issues, they can heighten risks of conflict. In extreme cases, the result is violence that might not have been predicted during the prison phase of the relationship. Murder-suicides represent a recurring pattern in domestic violence cases. National statistics indicate that many of these incidents involve intimate partners, often in households where underlying conflict had not been publicly visible. This case aligns with that broader pattern. An argument escalated in private. Weapons were present, and both individuals were found deceased. Recognizing these elements underscores a need for greater awareness of domestic violence, even when warning signs appear minimal. Awareness campaigns often emphasize that early intervention, counseling, and monitoring of at-risk households can reduce the likelihood of escalation. However, in many communities, these measures remain underutilized. Another context for this case lies in systemic shortcomings. Families dealing with reintegration after incarceration often lack consistent support. Employment opportunities for former inmates are limited, creating financial strain. Access to counseling and mental health services may also be inconsistent, particularly in rural areas. When support is absent, stress accumulates unnoticed, arguments increase. But without intervention, tension builds until it reaches a breaking point. The locked room detail in this case illustrates the private nature of such crises. By the time law enforcement is called, the outcome may already be irreversible. Missed warning signs form part of this gap. Friends, family, or community members may notice tension, but hesitate to intervene, either out of respect for privacy or lack of awareness of potential danger. This hesitation allows risk factors to grow unchecked. The most immediate consequence of this tragedy is the effect on the couple's 3 children. With their mother deceased and their father also dead, guardianship responsibilities fall to extended family. The transition disrupts childhood stability, leaving relatives to provide both care and continuity. Children impacted by murder-suicides often face long-term challenges. Loss of parental figures, sudden changes in living arrangements, and the circumstances of the deaths all contribute to lasting effects. Support from family and community becomes essential in ensuring their well-being. Kanisha's funeral service was held on August 13, 2024. The event provided a structured opportunity for family, friends, and community members to acknowledge her life and contributions. Tributes reflected her role as a mother, relative, and friend. Funerals also serve as public recognition of loss, giving communities a chance to gather, reflect, and begin the process of closure. In this case, the memorial underscored the gravity of the tragedy, while emphasizing the importance of remembrance. Beyond the immediate family, the wider community of Hoffman, North Carolina, experienced the shock of the event. Murder-suicides often leave communities unsettled, particularly when the individuals involved are known locally. Neighbors, colleagues, and acquaintances confronted the reality that conflict within a household had escalated to the most extreme outcome. This awareness contributes to collective grief, as well as reflection on the hidden struggles that may exist within any home. The Richmond County Sheriff's Office officially closed the investigation as a murder-suicide. No further criminal inquiries remain active, as the suspected perpetrator is deceased. The official narrative concludes that Sheldon shot Kanisha and then himself. Despite closure, unanswered questions remain. Why did this happen at this time? Could earlier intervention have prevented escalation? Were there warning signs that went unrecognized? These lingering uncertainties accompany many murder-suicide cases, where final motivations are known only to the deceased. This case highlights themes that extend beyond individual circumstances. It reflects challenges of prison marriages, the recurring pattern of domestic murder-suicides, and systemic gaps in supporting families at risk. Cultural reflection arises from recognizing these factors and considering how they apply in other contexts. 2 lives ended on August 4, 2024, within a locked room in Hoffman, North Carolina. The official record labels the event a murder-suicide. Behind that designation are questions of motive, systemic shortcomings, and the impact left on children, relatives, and community. The story illustrates not only the fragility of domestic stability, but also the unresolved shadows that remain long after headlines fade. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.
Woo! Looking like 10 over 10 plus 10 minus nothing. Add everything. That's me.
On October 21st, 2022, the body of a woman was found floating in the waters off Reading, St. James. She was later identified as 35-year-old Annika Townsend, known online as Slicky Anna. The discovery raised immediate questions about where she had been, who she was with, and how her final hours unfolded. Investigators traced her movements to the night before. Townsend had traveled from Kingston to Montego Bay on October 20th. That evening, she met with Man, visited a restaurant in Hanover, and later went to a guest house in St. James. The timeline placed her alive late that night. By morning, she was dead. A post-mortem confirmed she had been strangled, but the exact sequence of events remained uncertain. Attention quickly turned to a primary suspect. Arrests were made, charges were filed, and the case entered the court system. Yet progress was slow. Missing forensic reports and repeated adjournments delayed hearings for months, keeping the case unresolved. Each new court date raised the same question. When would answers be given? The investigation extended beyond one individual. Others were linked to the case, accused not of killing her, but of withholding information. Their roles became part of the wider inquiry as prosecutors worked to build a file. Before the trial could move forward, a major development changed the direction of the case entirely. The death of the accused left the legal process incomplete, with only secondary charges still before the court. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Annika Townsend was born and raised in Jamaica. She was widely known within her community and family by affectionate nicknames such as Kyan and Dumpling. Beyond her online presence, she maintained close family ties as a mother, a daughter, and a niece. Her most significant role was that of a mother to her young son, who she left behind at the time of her death. She balanced her public image with entrepreneurial efforts, establishing herself as an independent woman navigating both family responsibilities and business ventures. Townsend's upbringing and life in Jamaica positioned her within a culture that valued family connections, while also giving her the space to build a distinct identity in the digital era. Outside of her personal circle, Annika Townsend built a strong digital presence under the name Slicky Anna. On Instagram and TikTok, she gained a substantial following. Her content primarily revolved around fashion and beauty, which made her a recognizable figure across Jamaican social media spaces. She showcased outfits, beauty products, and her distinctive style. Her outspoken personality also drew attention. Followers admired her ability to present herself with confidence, and she cultivated an image of glamour and independence. She became known for her bold choices in visual presentation, often setting trends or sparking discussions among her audience. By late 2022, Townsend was recognized not only as an influencer, but also as a figure who contributed to the Jamaican online fashion and beauty scene. Her persona combined her everyday life with aspirational elements, keeping her in constant engagement with her followers. The sequence of her final days can be tracked with precision. On October 18, 2022, Townsend celebrated her mother's birthday, marking a family occasion that she attended. On October 19th, she spent time visiting relatives, including an aunt she had not seen in years. That day, she also had her last recorded conversation with her mother, maintaining regular communication with family. On October 20th, she made travel arrangements and left Kingston for Montego Bay. This trip was confirmed through various accounts and was part of the timeline investigators later reconstructed to understand her final movements. The evening of October 20th holds significance as it marked the beginning of her final documented activities. At approximately 7:30 p.m., Townsend was picked up in Montego Bay by a man later identified as Rushawn Chizzy Patterson, a 33-year-old from Hanover. From there, the two proceeded to a restaurant in Hanover. Surveillance records, witness accounts, and police reports later confirmed this stop as part of the evening sequence. Following their time at the restaurant, both individuals traveled to a guest house located in St. James. This series of movements established the last verifiable trail of Townsend's presence alive, narrowing investigators' focus on Patterson and their activities that night. At the guest house, a confrontation reportedly occurred between Townsend and Patterson. The details of the dispute remain unspecified in official court filings, but what is known is that the confrontation escalated fatally. Townsend was strangled during the encounter. The autopsy conducted days later provided clarity on the cause of death. Medical examiners concluded that Townsend died of manual strangulation. The post-mortem examination also allowed investigators to narrow her time of death to a window between 11 p.m. on October 20th and 9 a.m. on October 21st. This time frame aligned with the last sightings of her in Patterson's company and the discovery of her body the following morning. October 18th, 2022. Townsend attends her mother's birthday celebration. October 19th, 2022. She visits relatives, including an aunt she had not seen in years. Has her final conversation with her mother. October 20th, 2022. She leaves Kingston and travels to Montego Bay. At 7:30 p.m., she is picked up by Rushawn Chizzy Patterson. Both visit a restaurant in Hanover. They later go to a guest house in St. James. October 20th to 21st, 2022. A confrontation occurs inside the guest house. Townsend is strangled. Time of death estimated between late evening and early morning hours. The investigation into the death of Annika Slickiana Townsend was launched immediately after her body was discovered on October 21st, 2022, off the coast of Reading in St. James, Jamaica. Law enforcement agencies, including the Police Marine Unit and crime scene investigators, began compiling evidence to determine both the cause of death and the individuals responsible. The following provides a comprehensive account of the investigative process, the evidence collected, and the subsequent arrests and charges that define the case. The first and most critical step in confirming foul play came through the post-mortem examination. Forensic pathologists conducted the autopsy and delivered their findings on November 5th, 2022. The results established conclusively that the cause of death was strangulation. This finding ruled out accidental drowning or other natural causes and confirmed that Townsend had been deliberately killed. The timeline of death was estimated between late evening on October 20th and early morning of October 21st, aligning with reports of her last known movements. These findings gave investigators a narrow window within which to focus their search for suspects, as well as the means by which she was killed. Investigators recovered a series of forensic materials from both the location where the body was discovered and from sites connected to Townsend's last known whereabouts. This included blood samples found on a towel retrieved from the scene, fingerprints taken from personal belongings and from vehicles associated with the suspect, DNA evidence obtained through swabs from items believed to have been in close contact with Townsend. These samples were critical for corroborating her presence at specific locations and linking potential suspects directly to the crime. Given Townsend's prominence as a social media figure and her active communication online, digital evidence played a significant role. Authorities examined phone records to map her last calls and messages, surveillance footage from areas in Hanover and St. James where she was reportedly seen, digital communications, including social media activity, to establish a timeline of her interactions in the hours leading up to her death. This digital trail helped establish her meeting with a known associate on the night of October 20th, narrowing the list of possible suspects. Additional physical evidence was secured from key locations. A guest house in St. James where Townsend was believed to have spent time with her companion on the night of October 20th. A vehicle belonging to Rushion Patterson, which yielded further trace evidence that supported the sequence of events described by investigators. This combination of forensic, digital, and physical evidence allowed law enforcement to build a clear picture of Townsend's final hours. The evidence quickly pointed toward one primary suspect, Rushion Patterson, also known as Chizzy. Investigators confirmed through intelligence operations that Patterson had picked Townsend up in Montego Bay, taken her to a restaurant in Hanover, and later accompanied her to a guest house in St. James. Intelligence reports indicated that a confrontation occurred at some point during this time, leading to her strangulation. Additionally, authorities identified a second individual with knowledge of the crime, Rowan Earlyby Rose, a 47-year-old security guard. While Rose was not accused of direct involvement in the killing, investigators alleged he had knowledge of the incident but failed to report it, constituting a criminal offense under Jamaican law. Through surveillance, intelligence gathering, and forensic analysis, Patterson and Rose were officially linked to the case. On November 2nd, 2022, following an intelligence-driven operation, police arrested Patterson. His capture came after coordinated efforts across multiple divisions, as law enforcement monitored his movements and pieced together the evidence trail connecting him to Townsend's final hours. Following his arrest, investigators finalized their case against him. On November 11, 2022, Patterson was formally charged with murder. The charge was based on the autopsy confirming strangulation, physical evidence recovered from the guest house in his vehicle, and corroborating digital data. According to prosecutors, Patterson had accompanied Townsend during her final evening and was the last known person to be with her before her death. The state alleged that he strangled Townsend during a confrontation, making him directly responsible for her killing. While Patterson faced the primary charge of murder, a parallel case developed around Rowan Earlyby Rose. Authorities charged Rose with misprision of felony, a legal term that refers to the deliberate concealment of knowledge of crime without reporting it to the proper authorities. Investigators claimed that Rose had knowledge of Townsend's murder, but failed to disclose it, which hindered the investigation in its early stages. The charge did not accuse Rose of participating in the killing itself, but rather of failing in his duty to inform the authorities of what he knew. This legal action underscored the seriousness with which Jamaican law treats both direct perpetrators of violent crime and those who may aid them indirectly by withholding crucial information. The arrest of Patterson and Rose marked a turning point in the investigation. With Patterson formally charged, prosecutors now had a case that combined forensic evidence, witness statements, and technological data to support the murder allegation. Meanwhile, the charge against Rose highlighted the broader accountability net cast by law enforcement, ensuring that individuals who obstruct or conceal criminal activity also face legal consequences. Together, these developments demonstrated how investigators relied on a combination of scientific evidence, intelligence operations, and traditional police work to move from the discovery of a body to the identification and prosecution of suspects. The discovery of Annika Slickiana, Townsend's body in October 2022, was followed by an investigation that quickly identified Rushion Chizzy Patterson as the primary suspect. His arrest and subsequent charge of murder shifted the focus of the case from initial shock to the slow and meticulous workings of Jamaica's judicial system.
The St. James Police have charged 33 years old Rushion Patterson, otherwise called Chizzy, who is of a Harvey River, Hanover address, with the murder of 35-year-old social media influencer Annika Townsend, otherwise called Kean or Slickiana. Miss Townsend's body was retrieved by the Marine Police in the waters in the Reading area of the parish of St. James on the morning of Friday, October 21st, 2022. A post-mortem examination that was conducted on her body on November 5th concluded that her death was caused by strangulation. The post-mortem estimates that Miss Townsend was killed at some time between the hours of 11 p.m. Thursday, October 20th and 9 a.m. October 21st. During the course of this investigation, a wealth of forensic, cyber forensic, and other technical evidence was collected. Following consultation with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, the JCF Legal Services Division, Pattison was formally charged with murder this afternoon. The facts are that on Thursday, October 20th, Ms. Townsend traveled from Kingston to Montego Bay, where she was picked up by Pattison at approximately 7:30 p.m. During the course of the evening, they visited a restaurant in Hanover and a guest house in St. James. At some point in the night, an argument developed between them, which resulted in Ms. Townsend being strangled by Pattison and her body disposed. Additionally, a 47-year-old security guard, Mr. Rowan Rose, otherwise called Early B, has been charged with misprision of felony in relation to this same matter. Investigations are ongoing as it is suspected that Mr. Pattison may have been involved in other incidents similar to those for which he has been charged. As a result, detectives are appealing to the public for any information that may assist. Persons may contact the Montego Bay CIB at 876-684-908.
However, the proceedings that follow revealed not only the gravity of the allegations, but also the systemic hurdles and unexpected developments that reshaped the trajectory of the case. Following Patterson's arrest in November 2022, the matter was placed before the courts for mention. At the earliest stage, investigators confirmed they had compiled statements, forensic materials, and cyber-forensic data linking Patterson to Townsend's final hours. Despite this, the case did not move directly toward trial. By 2023, the court was informed that critical elements of the file, including the postmortem report and DNA analysis, had not yet been submitted. These documents were essential for the prosecution to confirm cause of death, narrow the timeline, and establish the strength of forensic evidence against Patterson. Without them, the defense could argue that the evidence remained incomplete. The absence of these reports meant that the court could not proceed as expected, resulting in repeated mentions with no firm trial date set. This delay became the first in a series of adjournments. Each time the matter returned to court, the absence of outstanding reports forced rescheduling. The prosecution argued that forensic analysis was ongoing, while the defense emphasized that their client could not be held indefinitely without timely disclosure of evidence. The slow pace signaled a broader issue. Even in high-profile cases, investigative processes often lag behind a demand for swift justice. Throughout 2023 and 2024, the case was marked by adjournment after adjournment. Judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys repeatedly convened, but progress was stalled. The main points of contention were the delayed submission of the DNA report and the final post-mortem documentation. The defense team for Patterson used these delays to argue procedural unfairness, suggesting that the accused could not properly prepare without full disclosure. Prosecution, on the other hand, maintained that the delays were logistical and tied to completion of scientific testing that required specialized handling. Public interest in the case remained high, and each adjournment drew renewed attention to the slow pace of the justice system. By mid-2024, nearly 2 years after Townsend's death, the case had not yet advanced beyond preliminary stages. The repeated rescheduling frustrated both legal teams, but was unavoidable given the outstanding materials. The role of the security guard, Rowan Early B. Rose, also emerged during these proceedings. He was not charged with murder, but with misprision of felony, the legal term for knowing of a crime and failing to report it. His case was tied to the main matter, but progressed separately. Like Patterson's, it too was subject to adjournments as the court worked through the larger case file. By late 2024, the court finally sought to reset the timeline. After multiple mentions with little forward movement, the matter was scheduled for January 31st, 2025. This date was intended for full disclosure by the prosecution, ensuring that all outstanding reports, including the DNA and postmortem, would be turned over to the defense. Separately, the court scheduled the case of Rowan Rose for October 16, 2025. This indicated that while his charges were less severe, his legal fate was still dependent on the outcome of evidence tied to the main case. At this stage, nearly 2.5 years had passed since Townsend's death, with the accused still awaiting a clear trial date. The delays underscored a central challenge in Jamaica's court system. Cases often move at a slow pace, with scientific and procedural bottlenecks prolonging resolution. Amid these delays, a surprising development emerged concerning the health of the accused. In 2024, reports surfaced in court documents that Rushawn Patterson was suffering from a life-threatening medical condition, suspected to be hemophilia, a rare disorder that affects the body's ability to clot blood. Defense attorneys argued that this condition made his incarceration dangerous and potentially fatal if not properly managed. They submitted bail applications citing medical grounds, noting that Patterson required specialized care. The prosecution opposed bail, maintaining that he remained a flight risk and a central figure in a high-profile murder case. Despite arguments from both sides, Patterson remained in custody, though with medical attention reportedly provided. The revelation of his condition, however, added another layer of complexity to the case. Not only did the prosecution face delays in evidence disclosure, but the court also had to address concerns about the accused's health while in detention. Just as the case appeared to be inching toward progress with new court dates set, it was suddenly and dramatically altered. On the morning of February 25, 2025, law enforcement officers carried out an operation in Hanover, where Patterson was residing on bail. During the operation, a confrontation occurred between him and the police. By the end of the encounter, Patterson was dead, reportedly shot during the exchange. The Jamaica Constabulary Force confirmed the incident, but details remained scarce. Almost immediately, the Independent Commission of Investigations in Deckham announced that it would launch a formal probe into the circumstances of a shooting. The commission was tasked with determining whether the police acted lawfully or whether excessive force had been used. Patterson's death presented a significant complication for the legal proceedings. As the sole individual charged with murder, his absence meant that the central case could no longer proceed in its original form. The prosecution faced a challenge of closing the file against him while redirecting attention to the secondary accused, Rowan Rose. Rose's charge of misprision of felony remained active, but without Patterson alive to stand trial, the murder case itself would never reach a formal conclusion. The death also raised new questions. What exactly transpired during the police operation? Was the shooting avoidable? Did Patterson's known health condition contribute to the circumstances of his final moments? In Deckham's investigation was expected to provide clarity, but until its findings were made public, uncertainty lingered. The death of the primary suspect, Rushawn "Chizzy" Patterson, altered the direction of the case entirely. Patterson, who had been charged with the murder of Annika Slickiana Townsend, was awaiting his trial after several delays in the court system. On February 25, 2025, before his case could be resolved, he was fatally shot during a confrontation with police in Hanover. With his death, the murder trial against him could not proceed, leaving key questions unanswered and creating uncertainty in how justice would ultimately be delivered. With Patterson no longer alive to face trial, the focus of the legal proceedings shifted to another individual tied to the case, security guard Rowan, Early B. Rose. Rose had been charged with misprision of felony, meaning he was accused of knowing about the murder but failing to report it to authorities. While his charge was not for committing the murder directly, it still placed him at the center of what remains of the judicial process. Rose's next court date was scheduled for October 16, 2025. The case also highlighted significant issues within the Jamaican justice system. Patterson's trial had been delayed multiple times due to incomplete forensic reports and postponed submissions of postmortem and DNA evidence. These delays extended the case far beyond its expected timeline. By the time Patterson was killed, more than 2 years had passed since Townsend's death, and a full trial had still not begun. These systemic shortcomings became a central issue raised by observers, who questioned how the slow pace of proceedings may have denied the family and the public a timely resolution. The murder of Annika Townsend sparked a large reaction across Jamaica and among her followers worldwide. As a public figure known widely through social media under the name Slickiana, her death quickly gained international attention. Tributes flooded platforms such as Instagram, TikTok, and X, formerly Twitter, where followers and acquaintances highlighted her influence as a fashion and lifestyle personality. Her image and videos continued to circulate, reinforcing the reach of her online presence even after her death. Beyond tributes, there was also a public call to action. Hashtags including hashtag #ForeverSlick and hashtag #JusticeForWomen were widely used across platforms. These digital campaigns were not only tributes, but also pointed to broader social issues, emphasizing concerns about gender-based violence and the safety of women in Jamaica. Online petitions circulated, demanding legislative reform and stronger measures against violence targeting women. Activists and community leaders amplified these demands, arguing that cases like Townsend's highlighted the urgent need for systemic change. Protests and discussions in both digital and physical spaces followed, with citizens demanding accountability from both the police and the courts. The public response ensured that the case remained in the media spotlight long after the initial discovery of Townsend's body. Even as the legal proceedings stalled and Patterson later died, the conversation continued, reflecting the enduring impact her case had on public discourse. Although significant developments occurred, several critical questions remained unresolved. First, investigators never fully established what sparked the fatal confrontation between Townsend and Patterson. Reports confirmed they met on the evening of October 20th, 2022, and traveled together to a restaurant and later a guest house. A post-mortem revealed she had been strangled, but no clear motive was presented publicly. Without a trial, no official explanation for the killing was placed on record. Second, the possibility of additional accomplices remains a matter of speculation. While Patterson was charged with the murder and Rose with misprision of felony, some question whether others may have been directly or indirectly involved. No other individuals have been charged to date, leaving the extent of involvement unresolved. Third, there's the matter of systemic delays. The justice system took over 2 years to prepare for trial, with multiple adjournments caused by missing forensic reports. This raised the question of whether more efficient case management could have delivered answers to Townsend's family sooner. The delays not only prolonged the legal process, but also left open the possibility that justice would never be seen through to its conclusion, as ultimately occurred when Patterson was killed before trial. Finally, the question of reforms lingers. While the public demanded stronger protections, reforms to address court delays, forensic backlogs, and the handling of gender-based crimes have not yet been fully implemented. Whether Townsend's case will be a catalyst for meaningful change or simply another example of systemic shortcomings remains uncertain. Annika Slickiana, Townsend is remembered as more than the victim of a crime. To her followers and her family, she was a mother, daughter, and an influential public figure. Her brand as a social media personality continues to resonate, with her online accounts still visible to the public. Her name has become tied not only to her fashion and lifestyle content, but also to the discussion sparked by her death. Her case has come to symbolize the issue of violence against women in Jamaica. Townsend's death is not viewed in isolation, but as part of a wider pattern of gender-based violence that has been the focus of both public outrage and policy debate. As a well-known influencer, her case received more attention than many others, but also drew focus to victims whose stories may not have been as widely publicized. The public campaigns and activism linked to her death continue to fuel conversations about policing, justice delays, and the protection of women. Calls for legislative reform, increased police accountability, and more robust social protections for women have been directly tied to the awareness created by her case. The Townsend case exposed multiple flaws in Jamaica's criminal justice system. From investigative challenges to repeated trial delays, the process highlighted how systemic weaknesses can prevent timely resolution of serious crimes. The death of the accused before trial further revealed the fragility of justice when cases remain unresolved for long periods. Townsend's case is therefore more than a single instance of violent crime. It is an example of how flaws in investigative and judicial systems, combined with broader societal issues such as gender-based violence, can converge to leave families and communities without closure. The story of Annika Slickiana, Townsend does not end with the death of her accused killer. The legal proceedings remain incomplete. The full truth of what happened on October 20th, 2022 is still unclear, and systemic issues that shape the outcome are unresolved. while her memory continues to live on through tributes and digital campaigns. Her case also stands as a reminder of the gaps in justice and protection that persist. At present, her legacy exists in two parallel forms: as a remembered influencer whose presence shaped online spaces, and as a symbol in the ongoing discussion about violence against women and the reform of Jamaica's justice system. Her story remains unfinished, but its impact continues to influence public conversation and demand for change. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.